Good morning. Today is Wednesday, the 28th of August, 2013. My name is Gaetana Broylette. I'm a volunteer at the American Red Cross at Fort Bliss. And the Library of Congress created the Veterans History Project on the October 20th, 2000. And today I will be interviewing retired Major General Edward Greer. And I will ask him to give his full name, his date of birth, his place of birth. And then he will continue on the questions I will be posing. General Greer, would you please give us your full name, your date of birth, your place of birth?
Okay. First name is Edward, last name is Greer, G-R-E-E-R. Date of birth is March the 8th, 1924. I was born in Greer, West Virginia.
And will you state how you became aware of this program?
Well, I became aware of the program by the conversation with Ann Broylette, who told me about the programs some time ago. And asked me would I be a volunteer down the line, in which I readily agreed to do so.
And I'm happy to have you here. Can you tell us, or will you tell us, about your family, your spouse, your children, your parents, and what they are doing, what they've done, insofar as the military? Have they been a part of your life?
Well, I was born in Greer, West Virginia, which is a coal mining town. My parents, especially my father, was a coal miner. And he, I guess, worked in the coal mines for close to 40 years. So, having grown up in the state of West Virginia, which is a coal mining state, that was a normal occupation for people in that state. I was educated in the elementary and high schools there in the state of West Virginia, and received my college education in a state institution at West Virginia State College, which was 120 miles from my town of Greer, West Virginia, where I was born. My mother was a housewife, did not work outside of the home. I had a brother and a sister. They're both deceased at this time. But my brother was a product of the educational system there in West Virginia. Got his collegiate education in the state at Bluefield State Teachers College. My sister was a product of the same college I went to, West Virginia State College. And my brother later came back to the state and worked in the educational system as a teacher, but then moved on to the state of Ohio, into the educational system of that state, and also later on into Greer, Indiana, where he was in the education system and was the principal of high school in Greer, Indiana. My sister married a teacher and devoted the bulk of her career there as a housewife, and assisting her husband, who was a mathematics teacher in the school system there in the county. The county was, for Greer, encompasses McDowell County. So that represents the sibling side of the information and their education and what they did. Now, as far as my particular situation, after graduating from high school, I enrolled in college. Was in college for a year, and the war had started in Europe. So my whole college class enlisted in the Army.
What year was that?
Now that would have been in May of 1942. My class was brought on active duty in May of 1943. Our college was had an ROTC unit there, which was a field artillery ROTC at that time. So therefore, it was only natural that the whole class go to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for its basic training, which we all did. And that was done in May of 1943, and we completed 16 weeks of basic training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and the bulk of us were sent to form a brand new unit out in Camp Beale, California, which was the 777th Field Artillery Battalion. A few of those of us that did not go on to join this battalion were sent to other units around the country, but just a small percentage of the college group that did not go to form this new battalion.
You said Camp Beale?
Camp Beale, which was an Army post, which is north of Sacramento. It was an Army post at that time. It is now under the jurisdiction of the Air Force, and it is called Beale Air Force Base.
Spell that.
B-E-A-L-E.
That's what I thought. I didn't recognize that.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. But
After that?
well, we unit trained there in California for Europe, and we trained for about a year, and then we were shipped to Europe, I guess in 1944.
Where?
We first we staged over in England for about 2 weeks, and then we got on LSTs and we landed in France, and of course the combat had moved ahead by that time. So being an artillery unit, we were catching up to the war.
LST. What is that for?
Landing ship transport.
We need
It's
to
a
get...
Navy, it's a Navy vessel. Small Navy. It's designed to carry small unit operations.
Future generations probably would not know those LST definitions, and that's
Right.
why we need to
Right.
express it.
Right. And so the unit was, we moved from France on into Belgium. So I guess we first got our first bit of combat in Belgium. And from then on until the end of the war, we roamed around Europe as what is known as a corps artillery unit. In other words, you can go anywhere.
You were in combat in Belgium?
Well, we first got our initial firing missions in Belgium.
Were there any casualties?
No, not, as I remember, not at that time. By this time, the battles were moving on forward, and being in the artillery, it was a matter of just rendering support to whomever asked for it. Because the type of unit that we were in, what is known as a core artillery unit, you can support any and everybody. So that was the basis, the operation that we had.
How long did that last?
Well, it was a fluid operation. So you go from one area of the battlefield to wherever you need it. And that's why let's say it's a core artillery. You're not attached to a division. I mean, you're attached to a division, but you're not a part of that division. So you bring in an additional support. And that was the whole purpose of a unit like ours.
During that period, what was your rank?
I went in that service. I joined that unit as a private, and in that time frame, I was a corporal. And later, I got promoted to sergeant. And of course, I stayed with that unit the entire, quote, wartime until I was discharged in December 1945.
What did you do as a sergeant?
I was what is known as a gun sergeant, and I worked with the crews on the artillery weapons. And then I was later moved up, and I guess for a while, I guess I was like an assistant first sergeant as such. Where I actually wound up before the war ended as the first sergeant of this battery that I was in. I was in Battery C of the 777th Field Artillery Battalion. So by that time, we're speaking of in December of 1945. Through the time I was actually mustered out of the Army in December of 1945. I had the rank of first sergeant, which would be similar to our EH today.
When you say you were mustered out, is that the same as a reduction in
That's the
force?
same as discharged.
Discharge.
That was my discharge.
What is a reduction in force?
Oh, yes, because see, the war was over.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no need to hold on to this large standing army that was in the inventory in December of 1945, early part of 1946. So the army was just discharging units as fast as they could get them off the books. And that was all part of that operation.
Do you remember the day that you left?
The day that I left
When you were mustered out?
Oh yes, December the 12th.
Do you remember that particular day?
That December the 12th, 1945, at what was known as Camp Crowder, Missouri. Now Camp Crowder was a signal corps installation, but the Army was just placing units wherever they could find the space. And here our outfit was an artillery unit, so we came back from our landing at the port in Bayonne, New Jersey, and we troop trained all the way out to Missouri, inactivated the unit, and we received our discharges in December 1945.
Were you happy?
Oh yes, because the war was over, for one thing.
Okay, when you came into the Army, you came in through ROTC, is that right?
Well, ROTC was my beginning training.
Yeah.
But see, then the Army activated, so we were all had an enlisted status at that time. So it was just a matter of exercising the enlistment.
Okay, so you're not being considered as a draftee or as
No, we were not a draftee.
or an enlisted.
We were enlistees.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And while you were in Europe and roving around from country to country,
Oh,
how did you keep in touch with your family?
well, at that time, the U.S. mail, as crude as it was at that time, that was the only way to do so. The mail was few and far between and very slow.
And running around in those countries, what was the food like? Did you have American food? Or?
Oh, yeah, well, see, the Army had its own issue. So our mess sergeants would go to the, what was then what we call service battery, to pick up we call it the rations. Just as, they have today, there's a ration distribution bit, even cook's worksheet, and that kind of business, even in those days, as ancient as that was. So we were not living off the country or the land, because first of all, there wasn't anything there. There was so much that had been destroyed. Our main focus was trying to exist among all this devastation. But as far as the rations and that bit, that continued through the normal cycle as it should have.
And supplies.
Same thing for supplies. There was a supply line. For example, requisitions for parts and things like that went back into the system, a request and a delivery. So it was there. There are folks and people and units that's their business.
That must have been awfully stressful.
It was stressful and it very time consuming.
And during the stress period, you didn't happen to encounter any celebrities anywhere along the way, did you?
Oh no, which celebrities we did see.
Did you ever visit the USO?
We may have seen or heard of somebody at that time, but
Did you have a camera with you?
that one,
Have a camera?
I'm afraid we weren't taking too many pictures. No.
Do you recall any particular humorous or otherwise eventful situations involving your instructors at Basic?
Oh, yeah. We had a very tough first sergeant in basic training at Fort Sill. And, the whole thing of Saturday morning's inspection were sometimes humorous as well as
Annoying?
frightening. Because here's a guy whose word was gospel. Here, in other words, here was God. And being the first sergeant of a basic training organization was an experience. Every soldier can relate to that.
Did anybody ever pull any pranks, or did you ever pull any pranks?
Oh yeah, I think there's always somebody pulling a prank. I mean, so that happens in just for being in the Army, where you are and what you're doing.
I don't recall, did we talk about your children?
My children? Now the children, of course, they came along after I had finished college. But I got back, I was discharged in December of 1945. In January, by 46, I had enrolled back in college on a GI Bill and trying to pick up my educational life where I dropped it, like 3 years prior. So from January 1946 to May of 1948, I was a student in college on a GI Bill, working whatever jobs I could, find in the college system. Of course, in those days, students could had jobs they could work, which would pay for some room and board. And I tried to gather all those that were possible. So in addition to the GI Bill, which was fantastic for providing some monetary means to exist, because let's face it, my family is a poor family, and they could not start picking up a huge college bill from that standpoint. So I graduated in May of 1948. I graduated on 30 May 48, and I married on 31 May 1948.
How did you meet Mrs. Greer?
She was a student there at the college also. She comes from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, but she came from Arkansas and enrolled in the college there in West Virginia. And it was, we met after I returned to college and courted for a couple of years and married, as I say, the day after graduation.
Love at first sight.
Oh, not necessarily, but pretty strong attraction though. Yeah. And then, of course, at the same time, I had gone through the ROTC program. So at graduation, I was also commissioned a second lieutenant in the field artillery. I was also a distinguished military graduate, and with a chance to come back on active duty as a commissioned officer.
The year?
In August 1948. I think my return to active duty, I think it was around the 12th of July of 1948, was my first duty station as a commissioned officer, Fort Riley, Kansas. And the whole purpose of Fort Riley at that time was to attend what was known then as the Ground General School. This was a school that they had, of course, recognizing after the war, then the education of the newly commissioned officers. This is about a 3-month time frame where the graduating class from West Point and all the graduates of the ROTC universities in the country in 1948 were assembled at Fort Riley. And we were enrolled in this, what was known as the Ground General School. It was basically a school for the basics, just to start the newly commissioned officers off on either giving them a good footing as before they went to their branch schools. So that we did that from August to December.
You did not choose your branch. Your branch chose you.
Yes, we did. We put in our preferences. But in my particular case, it was somewhat set because my school was a field artillery school, ROTC. And at that time, the graduates of the field of the, whatever your branch was, the ROTC, more or less you were commissioned in that branch. So the business of branch immaterial or choosing the branch didn't come. That came later. But I was more or less, I knew that I would be commissioned in the field artillery.
General Greer, would you like to stop and have a drink of water?
Yeah, I got to bring you.
Yeah. I've got you speaking so much and not offering any water. Now, as you're going through this interview, do you find it's relaxing?
Huh?
Do you find this interview relaxing?
Oh, I don't have any problem. My biggest problem is trying to remember dates.
And you're doing quite well, I think.
Okay.
So these people would meet at Fort Riley, and you're all going to the ground school.
Ground General School.
Ground General School.
Right.
And then you go to different stations.
Yes, after graduation from that, you're sent to your branch school. In my case, it was Fort Sill, Oklahoma, the home for the field artillery. And then I was sent there and we were enrolled in what is quote is known as the basic course. That's, you know, for all brand new young lieutenants. Now, of course, at that time, your field artillery and your air defense artillery, the field artillery at Fort Sill and the air defense artillery guys came here to Fort Bliss. Now, the Army said that all artillery officers had to be, quote, cross-trained. So those of us that were in the field artillery came down here to Fort Bliss for a good 6 weeks or more to get so-called cross-trained in air defense. At the same time, all the air defense officers went to Fort Sill to do just the same thing. So there was a
Crossover.
bit of time there where you had to be both qualified air defense and field artillery.
Is that why they call that cross cannons?
Cross cannons. Cross cannons. Now some fellas, as a result of this, have served in both air defense and field artillery. In my particular case, I never served a day in air defense. I mean, all my duty time was spent with field artillery units. So for me, the training was good, but I never utilized it.
But I'm sure it helped.
Oh, it helped in my whole general education and training, though. Absolutely.
And with associating with the personnel from Fort Bliss when you arrived,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
you understood all about that.
But see, not only did I do that once, I did it twice. From the basic course and also the advanced course.
And where did you do the advanced course?
Well, Fort Sill and here, and Fort Bliss.
Fort Bliss was the advanced course.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Fort Sill was the
Well, both Fort Sill and Fort Bliss were the basic course and the advanced course. I went to the advanced course 6 years later from the time I went to the basic course.
That's a long period, isn't it?
Well, captains they didn't move. I mean, actually, officers did not. The promotion system was so slow in those days that one may stay a lieutenant for several years.
Okay, so you went from private to sergeant to captain, and how did you continue your
Well,
promotions?
well, see, when I finished the basic course, I stayed at Fort Sill for maybe 3 or 4 months. And then I was sent to Japan. I joined a field artillery unit in Japan with the 25th Division. And what should have been a 3-year assignment. So I went to Japan in January of 1950. And of course the war in Korea started in June of 1950. I went to Japan as a second lieutenant, got promoted to first lieutenant over there, and once the war started in June of 1950, we were in a combat situation until really I left the unit in December of 1950. By that time, I had also gotten another job as having served in Korea in the artillery battery unit there. I also got a job with the battalion as a battalion, what is known as a battalion liaison officer, which had a TOD rank of captain. So I worked in that job and got promoted to captain in the fall of 51. And I worked as what's called the battalion liaison officer until I actually left the theater in December of 1951. And that completed my tour duty, combat duty in Korea.
During that time, were you able to keep in touch with your family?
Yes, of course, the mail situation was a little bit better by that time, and I got mail and packages from the States, and I remember very vividly one situation, one time frame, where my wife had sent some fruitcake over, and I just got the mail, just opened my can of fruitcake, and we got the order to move because we were also being attacked. The North Koreans had staged an attack, so my fruitcake never got consumed because it got really discarded in the rush to respond to the order to move. And that was a common situation there in that operation because it was a very fluid operation. So you find yourself moving, shoot, move, and communicate. That's what we were doing.
How was the supply system there?
The supply system was pretty good. Naturally, no comparison with World War II and the situation in Korea, because so much of the supply system came out of the depots in Japan. So we all were part of the 8th Army over there. And of course, we all were part of the depot system, which was in effect from shipments of parts and everything else from Japan.
Do you recall the name, the number of the battalion that you were attached to?
Oh, yes. It was the 1st to the 17th. No, I'm sorry. It was the 159th Field Artillery Battalion. In those days, we just had just one set of numbers for the unit designations. And I was all a part of the 25th Division at that time. We belonged to a division. And of course, we responded to the next level of headquarters for the division artillery. So, but we also, our primary mission was to support an infantry regiment. And that's where this business of the liaison came in, for me going as a tie between the battalion and the infantry. So, like my battalion commander, my artillery battalion commander, was in liaison with the regimental commander for the infantry. And of course we had these guys at my level and the captain level out there actually with the infantry as they going about their business. So in some instances you forget about being a field artilleryman and become an infantry, which was done quite frequently.
During that period, did you receive any citations?
It was during that period that I was involved with an infantry, we had an attack on our position. And we solidified our position. And being with the artillery, I was responsible for calling in artillery fire around that position. And of course, it was for that action that I was awarded the Silver Star.
Did you see any casualties?
Yes, we had casualties. We had lots of casualties. And we had wounded and killed. So.
Did you ever receive any shots from anybody?
Shots? Not so much shots, very close shots, but more fragments from mortars. I have some scratches, scars on my back from mortar fragments, but I was too gung-ho and too dumb at that time to actually have it recorded and therefore being a part of my record. So yes, I have several.
Did you get a Purple Heart?
I was too dumb enough to even apply for it.
Is it too late?
Oh, it's too far. I don't know. I've lived all this time now. It doesn't bother me. I mean, but from a standpoint of injury, I'm real blessed for not having had any debilitating type injury as a result of the operation. Because I was in a whole bunch of combat, and ordinarily I should have.
Do you remember where you were in combat in Korea?
Not specifically. The years have taken all their toll as far as precisely. For example, I can't tell you exactly where we were when I got the Silver Star. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm quite sure in my citation, somewhere is mentioned that fact that whatever mountain or whatever it is we were defending is all part of that deal.
Somehow I got off the subject of your children.
Oh.
And we swayed all the way over back to the wars.
Well, okay. The children came along. The first child, my daughter, I have a girl and two boys. She was born at Fort Sill in August of 1949. And the second child was a boy, was born while I was in Korea. He was born in September of 1951. And the third child, the youngest, is also a boy, was born at Fort Lewis, Washington, after I returned from Korea in 1951. So he was born in 1952 at Madigan Army Hospital there at Fort Lewis.
Were any of them ever in the service?
Yes, both boys were in the service. The oldest one graduated from Holloman Medical School in Philadelphia and signed up with the Army and actually got his education and training at the Army. And he did his intern and his residency at Madigan Army General Hospital out in Tacoma, Washington. He stayed in the service for about 6 years. After leaving Madigan, he was transferred to Womack Hospital at Fort Bragg. And of course, his specialty was OBGYN. So he was assigned to the station hospital there at Fort Bragg and delivered lots of babies. And after his Army time, like I say, I think it was around 6 or 7 years.
How many babies does he have?
Hundreds. Oh, does he have or delivered?
Does he have?
Oh, he and his wife have 2 children, a boy and a girl. And one is an engineer, biomedical engineer, and the other one is a event planner for Washington, D.C. So when you see the cherry blossom parade and all that stuff, that's her project. And of course, the boy is a graduate of the University of Michigan with a biomedical engineering degree. And he now works for General Electric in Maryland.
The family has done well.
Yeah, they have done well. Now, the youngest boy was stationed at Fort Bliss. He did his basic training out at Fort Ord, and after that was sent here. And I guess he spent about 3 years or more here at Fort Bliss.
His name?
His name is Kenneth, and the older boy's name is Michael, and the daughter's name is Gail, G-A-I-L. Now, Gail is a product of the finance area. She went to college at Hampton Institute down in Virginia. Worked in the banking business for several years. Later got into the Bank of America system. Must have probably worked maybe 10 or 12 years with them. Later on went to Wharton School of Finance in Philadelphia. And later went on into what was known as Crocker Bank and back into the Bank of America system. Worked for a short bit on Wall Street and the Investment Council. Thought that she needed some additional education, so she applied to go to the London School of Economics in England and was accepted. So she went to England and got a master's in economics from the London School of Economics. Stayed over in England and did some work with the system, financial world over there. And so she now lives both between the U.S. and England.
Is she married?
She married a British, and they've been together for about the last 20 years or so.
And did they have children?
No children. But she has a child from a previous marriage. So one daughter, our granddaughter, who lives in Phoenix, and she's married. She was married to a lawyer, a regulatory attorney out in D.C., and his company moved them to Phoenix. And that's how they got from Washington, D.C. area to Phoenix, and they have 3 little girls. So we have 3 great granddaughters.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So you got to be a captain.
So I was a captain, I guess I was a captain for about 6 or 7 years. And the first assignment after Greer was at Fort Lewis, Washington. Of course, that's where the youngest boy after that was born. Here again, I was assigned to a field artillery group there at Fort Lewis, a brand new unit, just starting out. And I guess I stayed at Lewis for about a little over a year. And of course, by that time, the Army was saying they were short of artillery captains in Europe. So a lot of the fellows that were with me in Korea, artillery captain wise, some of us came back on the same airplane from Korea. We now find ourselves on another airplane going to Europe. And there were 2 or 3 of us that had been in Korea. We found ourselves being assigned to the same unit in Germany. And I was assigned to an artillery unit in Germany, and I stayed with that unit for 3 years.
During that time, did you tour Europe?
Oh yeah, we got a chance. We did get a chance to travel. And we got a chance to go up to Holland, and we got a chance to get some travel into France and to Spain, and that was, and Belgium. And I had an old buddy who was with me in World War II, who had taken his discharge and lived in Liège. So I got a chance to visit with him. And that was real interesting because I had, at that time, a 98 Oldsmobile. I forgot the exact year. But I took that car to Germany, and that's what we used as our transportation there. So we were driving from Germany. I was assigned that we were living in Gießen, Germany, which is north of Frankfurt. So we drove over to Belgium, to Liège. And of course, I don't think the people in his little village had seen that American car of that time frame. So it was quite an attraction in the village because everybody came up and more or less patted and looked all over the car. And of course, one of the things that we did for my friend was to take him a care package. So we took him a whole bunch of Kellogg's cornflakes, Wheaties, Cheerios, and things like that. That at that time, they were not able to get there in Belgium. I guess we had been able to still communicate. Because that's how I knew where he was and how to find him. But that was an experience because he had married a Belgian girl and started a family. And of course, actually, unfortunately, after that trip, I didn't have any idea as to what happened to him or that kind of business. So, that ended a part of my life I never had the chance to hook up with anymore.
Did you have any reunions with any of the people that you were in the service with? Have you had a reunion since you've been gone?
Oh yeah, one of the outfits that I served with in Greer, the infantry regiment, we have a reunion with them. I'm a part of their organization as such. And we get together every July. And we just had our 27th reunion in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it used to be 200 or 300 people, and now it is down to a little over 100. That is with soldiers and their wives.
Are you getting tired a little bit?
Well, how much we got? Well, you got any time element on this?
Well, it's up to you. Do you want to go through your ranks up to Major General?
Well, yeah, I can do that. We have to. Let me see now. Well, that's it. I came in the advanced course in '55. Came back home. I finished up the German assignment in '55 and came back to the States to Fort Sill and Fort Bliss, and in fact 55, 56 times for me. And the first assignment in Washington came after that in '56. I don't know why the Army would send a captain to Washington, D.C., but there were 3 of us out of that advanced course that were assigned to D.C. And I went to D.C. and we spent 3 years there. I was working in the Department of Personnel. No, I started out in intelligence, an outfit in intelligence. And this is where my memory starts getting hazy on me. I guess that's where I need my DD-214.
When were you promoted to Major?
It would have been in because I've served as a major in an outfit out of Fort Lewis, Washington, in an artillery unit.
And as a lieutenant colonel, where did you serve?
As lieutenant colonel in the Pentagon.
And as a colonel?
As a colonel, I got promoted to colonel in the Pentagon. I was back on another assignment, Pentagon. Then went to Vietnam as a colonel.
You were in Vietnam?
In 1970. I just came out of Vietnam in '71. I was assigned to a Secretary of Defense slot. And I stayed there and I was picked up for BG.
So you were picked up for BG in Washington.
in Washington. And I was sent from there to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I stayed 2 years there. And I guess I got picked up from Major General, and I was assigned to what was known as Military Center, Military Personnel Center. So this would have been in the 70s time frame. So I spent about 2 to 3 years in DC, because I retired in December of 76.
So we've got all of your dates and your ranks.
Well, kind of hazy.
But, what did you do as a BG? Was it Fort Leonard Wood?
Yeah, I was a deputy commander at Fort Leonard Wood. And Leonard Wood was an engineer post. So at CG, it was an engineer. And they did basic training as well as specialized training for the engineer MOSs. And they had a fantastic school system in the posts there for the engineer troops. And one of the requirements was they had to have a combat arms officer as the deputy commander, because they were doing basic training. And basic training at that time was around 8 weeks. In fact, it was cut down from 8 by the time I left there to 6 point something weeks. So it was a very demanding job, a very rewarding job, because you could see, you're taking a kid off the streets, and you're taking him under your supervision, and in this case, with the drill sergeants and everybody else that's involved. And in let's say 8 weeks, you're turning out a pretty good looking soldier. And of course, I guess the rewarding part came because we had great graduations for each of those classes. And the parents, the mamas and the papas, telling us how thankful they were that we took their little Johnny, who was a thug in some instances, and turned him into a gentleman. And
That must be your reward.
it is. It was the rewarding part there.
How did your military life affect your civilian life, if it did influence it in any way?
That was one.
Your military life, did it influence your civilian life?
Well, one of the things I guess it influenced a bit was the advantage of teamwork. Because let's face it, you don't do all these things by yourself. If you gather around you good people, you can accomplish a hell of a lot. And that is one of the things that some of the lessons learned from the military that you can take to the civilian side of the house.
We're about ready to close, but I must ask you, since your retirement, have you joined any service organizations, and if so, which ones?
Well, I just about belong to all of them.
Can you name them?
Well, I belong to first of all, I belong to the military order, military order of the World Wars. I belong to the Military Officers Association, MOAA, what was formerly the TROA outfit, and also the National Association,
TROA?
which was the old Retired Officers Association. And then, of course, the National Association for Uniformed Services, known as NOUS. So those two units, well, actually those three units really comprise the basis for most of the, quote, military civilian organizations here at Fort Bliss. Now, early days I belonged to the AUSA, Association of United States Army, and
Any civic organizations downtown? The Rotary Club?
no, I don't belong to the Rotary Club. And I don't belong to the Rotary Club because they have a requirement that you got to meet once a week. And I knew I couldn't meet the requirement. Great organization. I support them in some other things they do, but I'm just not a member.
I have but one.
I enjoy the symphony here, and when they do have opera, we enjoy that. My wife did work with this RSVP outfit, and
Is there anything that you would like to enter on the video that I have not asked you?
well, people ask me, well, I'm maybe one of the few people living in El Paso who really, I was never permanently assigned to Fort Bliss. Now, I have an association with Fort Bliss by virtue of the Air Defense School. I was a student of both the basic course and the advanced course in the school, but we never had a permanent change of station to Fort Bliss. So people, I wonder, how is it I was never assigned to Fort Bliss, but I'm now living in El Paso? Well, it was that awakening during the time I was a student here, which actually showed me what goes on in Fort Bliss. Now, the thing that I considered in moving from Washington, D.C. to El Paso was, one, the weather. That's maybe a strange thing for some people. But when you are beginning, or your family member is beginning to have arthritis, and you find that the weather in El Paso offers relief for that ailment, then that can go to the top of the list. And of course, the other thing was the expense of living. There's no doubt about it, you can live a little bit cheaper, should I say, in El Paso than in Washington, D.C. I mean, the price of property is certainly in El Paso not like it is in D.C. And just the general flow of things, traffic jams, which El Paso does not have except for maybe 10 minutes at 5 o'clock on Interstate 10, as well as just the price of any individual item. You make a comparison between El Paso and Washington, D.C., and you can come out a little bit better. So we just feel that having moved here health-wise has helped us tremendously.
When you moved here, had you been retired for a short time elsewhere?
No, I retired. I retired, say, the 1st of December, '76, and I moved here bag and baggage Christmas Eve of that same year, 1976. So I had just retired a short time when I moved here. So.
Well, if you don't have anything else to add, if you do, I'll wait.
Well, I can always come back for an ad deal.
Well, on behalf of the Library of Congress, the Veterans History Project, and the American Red Cross at Fort Bliss, I thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. That sure is a small report.